Did you know that your thumbs travel 2 marathons a year? That's over 18,480 feet scrolling on your phones. We spend over 2 hours, 27 minutes a day on social platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And getting people to stop scrolling and paying attention to your marketing is hard.
Problem isn't necessarily that people can't pay attention. It's that actually catching their attention, getting them to notice you in the first place as opposed to scrolling right by. That's the hard part. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of people who are competing with for that kind of initial attention. And you can put so much work into something that's a really great piece. If you can't capture their attention in the first 5 seconds, they're already gone and doing something else.
That's why Katelyn Bourgoin came up with the 5 F's of attention to help you grab your target buyer's attention and get them to check out your marketing. In this Marketing Powerups episode, you learn first, Katelyn's 5 F's of attention. Second, an example for each one of those. And number 3, one thing that's helped Katelyn accelerate her career to become a CEO of Customer Account. For each episode, I create a Powerups cheat sheet you can use to download, fill in, and apply the marketing concepts to your business right away. You can go to marketingpowerups.com to get those right now. Are you ready? Let's go.
Marketing Powerups. Ready? Go! Here's your host, Ramley John.
Talking about Marketing Powerups, one of the things that you recently written on your newsletter, also on Twitter thread, is around the 9 F's of attention. You provided some stats and some reasoning that it's really hard for people, even marketers, to get attention and other people to pay attention to what they're doing. Why is it so hard? Is there any things that you can share around why it's so hard for people to pay attention to things nowadays?
Well, I mean, I think that getting people's attention is hard. And I think that holding people's attention is hard. But I think that there's also this kind of untrue thing that's said by a lot of marketers, which is, it's really impossible to keep people's attention these days. But if you look at some evidence, that's not necessarily true, right? People still binge Netflix series. They still listen to 3-hour episodes of Rogan. They'll watch hours of YouTube content. They'll read insanely long threads, like some of the ones that I read. So the problem isn't necessarily that people can't pay attention. It's that actually catching their attention, getting them to notice you in the first place as opposed to scrolling right by. That's the hard part. And you can have the most amazing content, but if you can't hook people really quickly, then they'll never discover it. And so it's really about stopping the scroll, being able to create scroll stopping content. And that's a thing that a lot of, marketers are struggling with. And there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of people who are competing with for that kind of initial attention. And you can put so much work into something that's a really great piece. But if it's got the wrong headline or, the wrong intro, if you can't capture their attention in the first 5 seconds, they're already gone and doing something else. So that got me really thinking about, well, I'm curious, why do we pay attention? And what grabs our attention? And that led me to going on this path of coming up with what I call the actual 7 F's of attention. I've actually combined a couple of them.
Nice.
And there's a new one, but it's this way of remembering what the kind of key things are. And then within each of those, there's all sorts of cool brainy psychology stuff going on. But really there's, once you get a sense of why people pay attention and how attention works, then as a marketer, you can get better at actually capturing attention consistently, as opposed to having amazing viral hits and then things that just that you're so confident are going to work and you post it, nobody gives a crap.
In terms of how hard that is, I remember sharing in your a stat that you shared a stat on your post around this attention. I'm going to link it in the description. It's customercamp.co/attention. Most people go through 2 marathons a year of scrolling. That's 18,480 feet of scrolling. And I'm just thinking about last night before I went to bed, I was on Reddit. I was just scrolling through my feed. I'm going on Instagram. I'm going on Facebook, going through Twitter, like it's just a
Mhm.
scrolling fest. I realize now, and I probably run to 3 or 4 marathons a year just scrolling as a marketer just to see what people are up to.
I think marketers do a lot more scrolling than the average folk, right? Because we're scrolling for pleasure, but we're also scrolling for work.
That totally makes sense, and that is a challenge. And it's great you put together this 7 Fs now around grabbing attention from people. We're going to be able to cover 5 in this
Mhm.
session, but I'll like I said, I'll link through the rest in the description. One of the things one of the Fs is fears, and fears is such
Mhm.
a primal emotion. Can you talk a little bit about how marketers can capture and get people's attention through fears?
Absolutely. And so one thing I always like to start off with a caveat when we talk about this one is that you do not need to be one of those sleazy marketers who
Right.
is all doom and gloom and talking about death and disease and trying to scare the crap out of people to get them to buy your product. So there's this great kind of example that we give in this new challenge that I'm working on where I compare 2 commercials for mouthwash. One of them is from a brand and they talk about gingivitis, which is this terrible mouth disease that can lead to cancer and death and heart disease. And like, like you're like, yeah, gingivitis is scary. That's like, that's them really hitting into that visceral fear. But you don't have to go that route. This other brand that also sells mouthwash has this great ad, and it's of a minister or a priest, and he's giving his congregation a sermon, and they're all at the other end of the room in the corner because his breath is so bad he's scaring them away. And it's like you laugh, but what's actually
Right.
happening is it's tapping into one of our very human fears, which is about losing status or being rejected from our tribe. And that is a very scary thing because if you think about the way humans evolved, we needed other humans for survival. We lived in groups. We were a herding species and we needed each other so that we could get water and shelter and food. And so we have a very hardwired emotional fear around rejection. So you can tap into the literal fears like gingivitis and like heart disease, or you can play with something fun like bad breath and how that's going
That's
to
so funny.
be revolting to other people. And you're still actually tapping into fear, but it's a different approach. And it's an approach that no potential customer is going to look at your brand and go, ugh, another fear mongering marketer. They're actually going to appreciate it, but in their unconscious mind, they're connecting, oh, I don't want to have bad breath. I don't want to alienate people. I'm afraid of being rejected from the tribe. I'm afraid of losing status. I should freshen my breath. So fears are a big one, but like I said, you don't have to go right for the kind of like the jugular when it
Right.
comes to how you market around fears.
Another example you brought up in your Twitter threads, Snickers, the bar, chocolate bar, and there's a race. There's a 3 people who are going for a race, and the middle one is going the other way, and it's like you're not yourself when you're hungry, and it just feels to the core around you want to be the desire to be yourself and to be
Mhm.
productive and going the right way, and it's really tapping into that subliminal, unconscious desire and fear that people have to be productive, essentially.
That's it. That's it. And there's another way that we can, that marketers often tap into fear. And it's actually something that wasn't really a name for it that I could find in the, neuroscience literature, but it's something that I think that we all experience. And so I named it myself and I call it FOBO, which is fear of being outdone. And so I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but you're scrolling through social media and you see a peer or somebody kind of that you look at as being in maybe another marketer, maybe you're a business owner, maybe it's another business owner in your space, and they're talking about how much money they just made on their launch, or they're talking about the house they just bought. It looks like a friggin' mansion. And that's another really
Interesting.
powerful motivator
Right.
because we're very competitive by nature. There was this incredible study that psychologists did that tapped into happiness and competitiveness. And people's happiness, which is kind of unnerving but true, is that as a kind of a broader analysis, people aren't necessarily happier when they make more money. They're happier if they make more money than their peers. Like it's less about like they did this study and they asked people, would you rather, assuming the cost of goods is the same, right? The cost of goods is the same. Would you rather make $50,000 a year and your peers make 25, or make $100,000 a year, but your peers make 150. And unanimously, even though the cost of goods are the same, unanimously people opted for $50,000 over 100,000 so that they would not be making less than their peers. So that's a real fear. And it's something that marketers can tap into in a, I think, not in a slimy way, but just showcasing people who are finding success with your solutions as social proof. It inspires, but I think it also really taps into our fear of being outdone. And we see other brands and other peers doing and achieving the things that we would like. It kind of motivates us to want to keep up. And if we can buy a product or sign up for a software that might be able to help us keep up, we're going to do it.
Yeah, that is, I love that. And it goes to one of the things that you're a big fan of, jobs to be done. That's for a whole different episode. I feel like we can, you and I can probably chat about that for several days on the show if we wanted to. But it's kind of connected to one of the F's that you shared around future me. Like how this desire, one of the things that you can grab attention is like helping them see who somebody can be in the future with your product. Can you talk a little bit more about that and any examples that you have for it?
Sure. And you often will see when we look at kind of what I'm calling FOBO, which lies under fears, and you look at future me, you'll often see them used together in content. So people will start with kind of a really shocking number of like, how much time they've saved or how much money they make, something that makes you go, oh shit, I'm not doing that well. And your competitive streak hits in. But then they'll explain, well, if you read the rest of this thread or if you watch this video, I can reveal how I'm doing this. And that's tapping into your desire for future me. So again, like we buy things because not of who we are necessarily. I don't buy things because I'm a 37-year-old woman living in Nova Scotia who drives a Volkswagen. Like that's not why I buy things. A lot of marketing personas would say that's why. But the reason that I buy things is because there's progress that I'm trying to make in my life. And ultimately, there's another version of myself that I want to become. And I see that product being something that will help me become that future me. So again, in the case of the mouthwash commercial, like future me doesn't want to alienate my, potential people I meet with terrible breath. You could see that a commercial for mouthwash showing somebody out on a date and they're getting close and but they can do that because they don't have to worry about having bad breath. So now future me can envision how my life might be better if I were to meet that partner that I've been seeking and we were to have this romantic encounter. So you can take your product and you can insert it into the story, but it's not the star of the story. The star of the story is the journey that the customer is going to go on to become this future me.
Another example I saw you share on that Twitter thread is with Nike, and there's a person running. Your only limit is yourself, and it's really tapping into, I guess, people who have this growth mindset and want to perform better. And Nike is the one that's the path towards it.
Nike is such a great example. There's actually this study, and I'll have to find a link to it, but I'll include it in a future piece where, like in a high school basketball, they did. They had all of these teams and they gave a bunch of the players Nikes and they actually performed better. Like the same player from one game pre having Nikes to then, having Nikes, they actually performed better. And it's because they believed the shoes would make them better. And so because they believed they'd be better, they did perform better. And this is something that behavioral economists refer to as the Glacier effect, which is oftentimes you've probably heard whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right, right? Your belief system and your ability to achieve or your ability that you're not going to, believing that you're going to fail, can really have huge impacts on your performance. And so because Nike has spent billions of dollars showing people that they're the brand that will allow you to become an athlete, to perform better, then when people put on the sneakers, they actually perform better, which is just incredible.
That is wow. That's a great way to show also placebo effect, but it's effective.
100%.
As long as you believe it, it becomes true. Before we continue, I want to thank the sponsor for this episode, 42 Agency. When you're in scale-up mode, you have to hit your KPIs, and the pressure is on to deliver demos and signups. It's a lot to handle. Demand gen, ABM, email sequences, revenue ops, and more. And that's where 42 Agency, founded by my good friend Camille Rexton, can help you. They're a strategic partner that's helped B2B SaaS companies like Profitwell, Teamwork, Sprout Social, and HubDoc build a predictable revenue engine. If you're looking for performance experts and creatives to solve your hardest marketing problems at a fraction of the cost of in-house, look no further. Go to 42 Agency, that's number 42agency.com, to talk to a strategist to learn how you can build a high-efficiency revenue engine now. Find that link in the description or show notes. Well, that's all for now. Let's jump back into this episode. And I guess that ties back to one of the other F's. It's around Fables. It's around telling a story. And Nike is also they do such a good job of telling a story, even within 30 seconds with an ad. I was watching somebody share how Vine videos, which was 6 seconds back then, you can have like everything you need, like a beginning, middle, and end, essentially, of a story. And it's all about, and that's one great way to capture people's attention is one of your F's. Can you talk a little bit more about Fables and how that is effective in terms of capturing people's attention?
So as marketers, we know that stories sell, right? We're like, if you can actually communicate your message, but you can do it as opposed to listing a bunch of features and benefits, but you can actually craft a narrative around it. You can capture people's attention, you can keep their attention. But what's interesting is, again, like looking at the neuroscience behind it, they've done research when when somebody is sharing a story and somebody is actively listening, the brain waves of them actually come together. It's this really amazing thing. Like, our brains are so impacted by stories, but we really build a bond and we empathize with the storytellers. It's so fascinating. And so when you look at some of the world's best marketers, Steve Jobs, he did this incredible job of standing up on stage when he was releasing a new product. And, the iPad's a great example, one of his best talks ever. But when he's talking about the iPad, he's not talking about any of the, the technical innovations that went into creating this amazing product. He's talking about being able to read the newspaper, being able to read in the bath or watch a movie. He's sharing how your life is going to change because this product now exists. And he does that through telling stories. There's this fascinating approach to selling, but you look at the best brands and they all do it. They all do it so well, and they all do it over and over. And again, those stories, coming back to the one we talked about before, the Future Me, oftentimes those stories are not about the brand. They're about how you can be better because of the brand. You look at Red Bull, they've done this incredible job of positioning themselves as, Red Bull gives you wins, and they tell these stories, but you're putting yourself in the hero's role, right? You're seeing yourself being the person who's able to do these death-defying stunts because you're drinking Red Bull. So the best brands, they tell great stories, but they also are not the star. They let you be the star of the story. They show how their product enables you on your journey.
You mentioned Steve Jobs. I think another thing that really helps him stand out is his turtleneck. The way he looks and talks, which I'm trying to apply it to one of the F's, which is foreign. He's just so unique. I think there's this effect that you talked about, von Restroff effect, and I could have totally mispronounced that, but essentially it's around how you can buck the trend to really stand out. And Steve Jobs does a good job with it. Can you give other examples and talk a little bit more how people can be, quote unquote, more foreign or more standing out so that they can really capture it?
The day that Ramley and I are doing this is the day before Black Friday. And Black Friday is obviously a huge day for marketers. And you're trying to figure out, how am I going to stand out from all the noise today? There's going to be so many people talking to my prospective buyers. How do I stand out? And so I actually just wrote a thread about 10 standout, unignorable Black Friday campaigns. And one of my favorites of all time is the one that Cards Against Humanity did last year, where instead of offering a Black Friday sale, they put the price of their product up by $5. So they called it a once in a lifetime deal. And then on the buy button, it said consume with an exclamation point. So they were poking fun at the fact that Obviously, every brand is trying to get you to buy on Black Friday. They're trying to get you to spend, spend, spend. They're like, we're going to buck the trend. We're actually going to make our product more expensive. And of course, this worked for them, right? They got a huge amount of press. Everybody came to the website and they ended up selling more games than they sold the year before. And so it's a great example. Another one along the same kind of thinking was this amazing one done by IKEA. So IKEA, instead of them saying, hey, come out and buy more stuff today, what they said is, hey, we want to buy your stuff back today. We're going to do a buyback sale. You bring in your old furniture. We're going to give you 50% of what it was worth. And then I think the old furniture got donated maybe to people in need, but then you got a voucher you could use for IKEA. So it was this beautiful thing where it's like, don't put this furniture in the garbage when you're done with it. This is not disposable stuff. Let's be more environmentally friendly. And rather than you consuming today, why don't you give back today? And we'll actually buy back from you. So that was a super smart campaign too. So again, of course, whatever is going to work for you to differentiate your brand, it completely depends on your brand. The one from Black Cards Against Humanity makes sense for Cards Against Humanity to do. Another really smart one that was on brand was REI, which is an outdoor clothing brand. They closed all their stores on Black Friday. What? They said, don't spend money, go outside. As a brand that sells outdoor clothing, right. Their customers loved that, right? It was completely different than what other brands were doing. It deepened the bond that REI buyers felt with that brand. They didn't make any money on Black Friday, but I guarantee you over the holidays coming up, they probably made even more that year than they had previously with their Black Friday sales. So you've got to do if you want to be, foreign, if you want to stand out, you have to really do things that are distinctly unique, but they should also be in alignment with your values and your brand.
That makes sense. And I think you're probably right. Like more people will start buying that brand's product for the holidays, especially it's probably a bigger sale for them potentially.
Look, it's also spread a really important message, especially when we think about future me. Who do I want to be in the future? Do I want to be the kind of person that buys yet another huge, device or like something that I don't need so I can sit inside and scroll? Or do I want to be the kind of person who goes outside and lives my life? So REI is in that message, even though it's so clever and it gets so much attention and press, it's also communicating very closely with telling people we're the brand for you if this is who you want to be. You want to be the kind of person who goes outside with your family on Black Friday, not the kind of person who stands in line to try to get $20 off a TV.
It seems like this approaches, this Fs, all can work really well together. It's not like very distinct. And which ties, the last one is around faces. And I'm guessing, when that company has some ads, they use faces, and Customer Camp has a face that looks directly to the call to action for one of your pages. And I feel like, going back to that, it does work well all together, is what I'm hearing.
They all work well because the faces one can be the one that grabs attention. So unsurprisingly, again, humans being a herding species, we notice other faces. So if we're scrolling through social media, let's say you're on Twitter, you're going to see all the little biopics in the top corner, but those are not huge, right? But if you're scrolling through and you see that somebody's posted a picture of their face and their face is making a funny expression, like it captures your attention. And so what we're doing, whether we usually don't consciously realize it, but we're looking for what I like to call friends, foes, and fucks. So we're looking for people who, are friendly, people who we could trust, people who are already part of our tribe or we'd like to have part of our tribe. We're looking for foes, people who we need to watch out for, potentially threats. And we're looking for fucks, which is not possible mates, right?
Right.
And so we're doing this unconsciously all the time. And when you look at some really eye-catching ads, they often have faces. Most of the best thumbnails on YouTube videos, right? Really faces. Funny faces. Like go to Mr. Beast's channel.
Mr. Beast,
you will see his face making this ridiculous expression with a pile of money behind him where he just got buried alive or something. But it's always his face, right? His face is just going to catch you. And so when you're using faces, it's a thing that you can fall back on to kind of catch that quick attention. But if you don't incorporate some of these other things we've been talking about, then you'll probably lose that attention really quickly. They'll be like, I'm not interested in that. And they'll just keep going. So you can't rely on just the face alone. You've got to back it up with something compelling as well. But the face can help you stop the scroll and get that attention.
I feel like what's also tied to that is around us trying to understand the emotion of that face. So like going back to Mr. Beast, like when Mr. Beast has his mouth wide open and he looks shocked. Like I said the word shock, but there's no word shock there. I'm just looking, okay, that he's shocked. Like, oh, that person's sad, or that person's like, we're trying to, even at a young age, babies, I'm guessing, are trying to figure out the emotion of their parents or people. And I feel like that goes back to, we're trying to understand, is that foe trying to attack me or trying to reach out a hand, or is that friend upset and how can I help? So that really it really taps into the YouTube tunnel that, now that you think about it, has a lot of faces and emotion to it.
Absolutely. If you go, one of the examples we give in this new program we're working on called Un-Ignorable is Alex Hormozi, who's written this great book called $100 Billion Offers. His style of marketing isn't necessarily for everybody. He's one of those kind of more traditional internet marketers, but he puts out really good content and he's certainly worth paying attention to. But if you go to his YouTube channel, he's got this video where it's him in the front looking kind of nervous, looking over, and behind him, the kind of thing he's looking at is this like woman in a bright red dress. And of course, like that makes us think about another one of the F's, which is fun. And well, guess what's fun? Pleasurable things like sex or food or whatever. Right. So you're kind of, your eyes caught there. And then the other side is a big pile of money. And I can't remember what the title of the video it is. It's like, they could leave you broke if you're not careful. Now, of course, your brain goes, is he going to talk about how women are stealing your money? So like you're curious and you want to see. But when you go through, it's got nothing to do with women stealing your money. It's just this attention grabbing like visual that makes you curious enough that you're like, I want to watch that video. And then the first 5 seconds he reveals what the video is actually about. And like, but it's just evident that if it would have just been, he could have probably shared the same message in that video. And I'll have to remember what that specific video was about. But because he tapped into fears, right? Leaving you broke, your loss aversion is a huge thing for people. Because he's showing his face and his face is looking scared and worried. Because she's showing this beautiful woman in a red dress, that's capturing your attention. There's, on the other side, there's a big pile of money, that's capturing your attention. It's like a holy palooza of attention grabbing stuff. Right.
All connected.
So you combine these things together and you really start to see how you can layer these techniques to create attention grabbing content. But again, it's not just about grabbing attention, because if you don't deliver, if you don't create value, if you don't leave your audience feeling like they're better off because of it, you feel like there's nothing worse than clickbait. Where you go through to an article that you're excited about reading, it had this really fascinating headline, and you have to scroll through 19 ads and it's a pointless article like that. We are all sick of that stuff. So there's lots of traditional ways to get attention, but if you don't actually leverage the attention and deliver, then you won't become what another one of the F's is, which is familiar, right? Like we will, if a brand grabs our attention and it gives value back, or a person, we eventually become to recognize that that is somebody of quality. We're going to pause when we see their content, right? But if we see that somebody is consistently, or like, a brand or a media company or whatever, is consistently just writing these clickbaity headlines or using clickbaity imagery, and that they're not delivering, we're going to know to scroll right by, right? BuzzFeed was really, really good at capturing your attention, but a lot of people probably don't click on those articles anymore because they know that they never actually fed them anything nutritious. It was just a bunch of junk food.
I want to shift gears now and talk about career power-ups, particularly for you. You've been in marketing for 12 years now. What's helped you in your career progression? And what's a power-up you can share to people that's really helped you take your career forward and as you move forward?
I would say that I got to have a very fortunate start in my career because I was working in a marketing agency, so I got exposure to a lot of different types of businesses, which is really great. And then I ended up starting a marketing agency and got to be both a business owner and get exposure to a lot of different businesses. So I feel like that's kind of like a cheat code, because when you're running an agency, you get to see so many different types of business. You have to think about how to create different like value propositions and how to build different brands. It forces you to be creative. And so I'd say that was a bit of a cheat code that kind of like leveled me up for when I was going to do more of the work that I'm doing now. But the biggest thing, and it's maybe a bit cliche, but the biggest lesson that I've learned in my career as a marketer is just you really need to focus on understanding your buyers. And every marketer says that, but very few of us are actually doing the work because it is work, right? It's like, everybody can say if you want to lose weight, you need to diet and exercise, but how much fun is that? Not very much. But you still need to do it if you want to lose weight. And it's true for marketers too. We need to stay focused on our customers. We need to get close to the customer. And so one of the techniques that for me has been the most game-changing for really understanding the audience that I'm trying to sell to and crafting better marketing materials is just one-on-one interviews with buyers. It's been a huge unlock. Just it gets you are able to learn about why they bought products and really understand their buyer's journey. And it just gives you insight into a part of the journey that's typically, in the dark. And from that, I think you can come up with way better and more empathetic marketing. So I'd say that that's my biggest power up. It's just learning the technique. I was lucky enough to get to see and learn from Bob Mesta, one of the co-authors of Jobs to Be Done, co-creators. And I'm just grateful for that learning.
Nice. And I believe you have a worksheet. Trying to plug in your product here. You have this product here. Can you talk? It's on your site, customercap.co. I've used it. Really, really great way to help people get started and not just tell people.
So it's the Clarity Call cheat sheets. And, it's not a video course. It's actually just a bunch of templates and scripts that you can use when you're starting to get started with interviews. But the goal is to help you feel really comfortable leading your first interviews, be able to get people to commit to an interview. That can be a little bit tricky. And then to be able to pull useful insights out of them. So you can kind of structure those in a way that's really obviously actionable. So that is available on my website. It's a resource that I created because I wanted it to exist in the world. I'm glad that other people find value in it too.
One last question before we wrap up is around what would you give? What advice would one or two or three, however many pieces of advice you'd like to give to your younger self when you were just starting out in your career? What advice would you share to the younger Katelyn 12 years ago?
I wish sweet little young Katelyn, so naive. I wish that she would have known sooner that there are no marketing secrets or growth hacks, like things like if something starts working and everyone's talking about it, it's not going to keep working very long, right? So there's ways you can kind of start doing things, jumping on trends and get some short-term growth. But really the long-term stuff is really just about understanding customers, committing to investing in understanding why people buy, how your customers buy specifically. And the more time that you spend exploring and being curious about customers, you're going to get more out of that than trying to hop on whatever the latest fad in marketing is. Marketers are exceptionally good at making you think that you're missing out on something awesome. That's kind of our job. And so I just wish that she would have understood that, because I think I spent a lot of time early in my career feeling like an imposter, right? Feeling like a fraud, thinking if all of these other folks are having such amazing wins and they're doing this technique, they're using funnels or they're doing this, or they're having like downloads or whatever, following all of these, marketing gurus and thinking that I was following the techniques, but I wasn't getting the results and that I must be doing something wrong. And the reality is that oftentimes there's just no shortcuts. It's exposure to a brand and trust that is built over and over and over again. And then when people are ready to buy, they buy, and they buy from you because they know you and they like you and they trust you. And that's a sucky reality for marketers to face, because we want there to be this secret. We want there to be this like hidden reality that if we could just tap into it, it would be so much easier, but it's so often not that.
I love this chat with Katelyn about the 5 Fs: fears, faces, foreign, Fables, and Feature Me, all to help you grab your target buyer's attention. You can find out more about Katelyn and her work by subscribing to her newsletter, Why We Buy, on customercap.co. And also follow her and find her on Twitter and LinkedIn. You can find all of those on the show notes and description. Thanks to Katelyn for being on the show. If you enjoyed this episode, you'd love the Marketing Powerups newsletter that I send out each week. I share the actionable takeaways and break down the frameworks of world-class marketers from each episode. You can go to marketingpowerups.com to subscribe, and you'll instantly unlock the 5 best marketing frameworks that top marketers use to hit their KPIs consistently and wow their colleagues. If you want to say thank you, please like and follow Marketing Powerups on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. If you're feeling extra generous, kindly leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and leave a comment on YouTube. It goes a long way for others finding out about Marketing Powerups. Thank you to Mary Solden for creating the artwork and design. Thanks to 42 Agency for sponsoring this episode. And of course, thank you for listening and tuning in. Well, that's all for now. This is your host, Ramley John. Until the next episode, have a powered up day. Bye.
Marketing Power-Ups. Until the next episode,